In the year 762, a new city began to rise beside the Tigris River. It was not built slowly by accident. It was planned, measured, designed, a city shaped like a circle, a city built to become the center of an empire. And for a time, it almost became the center of the world. This was Baghdad. Not the Baghdad of ruins, not the Baghdad of later wars, but Baghdad at its greatest moment. A city where merchants arrived with silk, spices, paper, glass, perfumes, and gold. A city where scholars argued over Aristotle, Euclid, Galen, Indian numerals, Persian astronomy, and the movement of the stars. A city where books were copied, translated, debated, and preserved. A city where the ruler of an empire did not only ask how to conquer land, he asked how to conquer ignorance. This was the golden age of the Abbasid Caliphate. From about 750 to 950, the Abbasids ruled the heart of the Islamic world. But the true strength of this civilization was not only its army, it was its mind. Because the Abbasids built something more lasting than walls. They built a civilization of knowledge. But this story does not begin with peace. It begins with revolution. Before the Abbasids, the Islamic Empire was ruled by the Umayyad dynasty. The Umayyads had built a vast empire from Damascus. They expanded across North Africa, into Spain, across the Middle East, and deep into Central Asia. But inside this empire, tension grew. Many Muslims outside the Arab ruling elite felt excluded. Persians, converts, scholars, and religious groups believed the empire needed a new direction. Then came the Abbasids, changing the course of history. They claimed descent from Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad. That gave them religious legitimacy. But their revolution was not only religious, it was political, it was social. It was also a promise that power would no longer belong only to the old Syrian Arab elite. In 750, the Abbasids defeated the Umayyads. The old dynasty fell, a new dynasty rose. And the center of power began to move east, away from Damascus, toward Iraq, toward Persia, toward the lands where old empires had once ruled, where Greek, Persian, Indian, and Semitic traditions had mixed for centuries. This was one reason the Abbasid Golden Age became so powerful. It did not grow from one culture alone. It stood at a crossroads. And at the center of that crossroads, the Abbasids built Baghdad. The city was founded under Caliph al-Mansur in 762. He did not choose the site by accident. Baghdad stood near the Tigris River, close to old Persian imperial lands, connected to trade routes, agriculture, and older centers of learning. It was close enough to control the empire, but it also looked forward. The city became known as the Round City. At its center stood the Caliph's palace and the Great Mosque. Around them were government buildings, military quarters, markets, libraries, workshops, and homes. The message was clear. This was not just another city. This was the beating heart of a new world. People came from everywhere. Arab administrators, Persian secretaries, Syrian translators, Jewish physicians, Christian scholars, Indian mathematicians, Turkish soldiers, merchants from Central Asia, travelers from Africa. Baghdad became a place where languages, religions, sciences, and goods flowed together. And that mixture created something rare, a civilization strong enough to rule and curious enough to learn. Then came the Caliph, whose name would become almost legendary, Harun al-Rashid. He ruled from 786 to 809. In later stories, his Baghdad became a place of wonder. A city of lamps, palaces, poets, judges, merchants, secret journeys, hidden identities, and impossible wealth. His court became linked with the world of the 1001 Nights. But behind the legend was a real political truth. Under Harun al-Rashid, the Abbasid court was one of the richest and most powerful courts in the world. Tribute and taxes flowed into Baghdad from across the empire. Trade connected the Abbasid lands to China, India, East Africa, Byzantium, and the Mediterranean. Paper technology, which had come from China through Central Asia, helped transform administration and scholarship. Books became easier to copy. Records became easier to keep. Ideas became easier to spread. This was one of the hidden engines of the Abbasid Golden Age. A civilization cannot become a knowledge center if knowledge stays trapped in rare manuscripts. It needs scribes, it needs schools, it needs libraries, it needs paper, it needs money. And Baghdad had all of them. But Harun al-Rashid's world was not just luxury. It was also fragile. Behind the palace walls there were rival factions, Arab elites, Persian families, court officials, military commanders, princes waiting for power. When Harun died in 809, his sons fought over the throne. One son was al-Amin, the other was al-Mamun. Their conflict became a civil war. Baghdad itself suffered. This was the first great warning sign. The empire was magnificent, but even a golden age can be cracked from inside. Al-Mamun eventually won. He became caliph in 813, and under him, Baghdad entered one of the most important intellectual moments in world history. Al-Mamun is one of the most fascinating rulers of the Abbasid age. He was not only interested in power, he was interested in questions. What is truth? What can reason prove? What did the Greeks know? What did the Indians calculate? What had the Persians preserved? What could Muslims learn, correct, expand, and surpass? For Al-Mamun, knowledge was not decoration. It was imperial power. He supported scholars. He encouraged translation. He backed astronomy. He promoted debate. He helped make Baghdad a magnet for intellectual life. This is where we meet one of the most famous symbols of the Abbasid Golden Age, the House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah. The House of Wisdom is often remembered as a great library and intellectual center in Baghdad. Its exact form is debated by historians. Some describe it as a royal library, some imagine it as a research institute, some caution that later legends may have made it more organized than it really was. But this much is clear. During the Abbasid Golden Age, Baghdad became one of the world's great centers of translation, scholarship, and scientific work. The Abbasid court gathered books. Scholars translated works from Greek, Syriac, Persian, and Sanskrit into Arabic. They studied medicine, mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, geography, optics, engineering, and logic. And they did something even more important. They did not only copy the past, they argued with it, they corrected it, they built upon it. This is what made the Abbasid Golden Age so powerful. It was not just a museum of old knowledge, it was a workshop for new knowledge. Imagine Baghdad at night. The markets are still alive, oil lamps glow in the alleys. A merchant counts coins from Egypt. A physician walks home after visiting a patient. A translator bends over a Greek medical text. A mathematician studies numbers from India. An astronomer looks upward, measuring the sky. Somewhere in the city, a debate begins. A scholar asks whether Aristotle was right. Another asks whether Ptolemy's model of the heavens needs correction. Another studies the human body through the writings of Galen. Another studies geography, not as a myth, but as measurement. This was the power of Abbasid Baghdad. It turned curiosity into a public force. And in that world, one name became especially important. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmi worked in the intellectual world of Al-Mamun's Baghdad. His writings helped shape mathematics for centuries. His work on algebra became one of the foundations of later mathematical thinking. Even the word algebra comes from the Arabic title of one of his works, and the word algorithm is linked to the Latinized form of his name. Think about that for a moment. Every time a computer follows an algorithm, the echo of Abbasid Baghdad is still there. This is why the Abbasid Golden Age matters. It was not only beautiful in its own time, it sent knowledge forward, across languages, across religions, across continents, across centuries. From Baghdad to Islamic Spain, from Arabic texts to Latin translations, from medieval Europe to the modern world. The Abbasids did not invent every idea they studied, but they created one of the greatest knowledge systems in history. They gathered, translated, organized, questioned, improved, and transmitted. That is how civilizations become powerful beyond their borders. Medicine also flourished. The Abbasid world inherited Greek medical knowledge, especially the works of Hippocrates and Galen. But physicians in the Islamic world did not simply preserve them. They practiced, they observed, they wrote, they built hospitals, they trained doctors, they organized medical knowledge in Arabic. In a world where many societies still mixed medicine with magic and superstition, Abbasid scholars helped strengthen medicine as a serious field of study. Hospitals in the Islamic world became places of treatment, teaching, and administration. Doctors compared symptoms, pharmacists prepared medicines, medical texts moved across the empire. The goal was not only to heal one person, it was to make healing into knowledge. And this was one of the deepest strengths of the Abbasid age. Knowledge became organized. Astronomy was another major field. To the Abbasids, the sky mattered for many reasons. It mattered for calendars. It mattered for prayer times. It mattered for navigation. It mattered for geography. It mattered because the stars were part of God's creation, and to study creation was to study order. Under Mamun, astronomers made observations. They worked with older Greek models. They measured, they calculated, they built instruments. They tried to understand the shape and scale of the world. There are accounts of scholars working to measure the Earth's circumference. Whether every detail of those accounts is debated, the larger point is clear. The Abbasid elite supported the idea that the universe could be studied with reason, numbers, and observation. This attitude helped make Baghdad one of the great scientific capitals of the medieval world. But this golden age was not only science, it was literature, poetry, music, theology, law, art, architecture, paper, ceramics, textiles, court culture, urban life. The Abbasid world produced refined styles that influenced Islamic art and architecture across vast regions. Baghdad and later Samarra became cultural capitals of the Islamic world. In the courts, poets could rise to fame. In markets, storytellers could gather crowds. In mosques, jurists debated law. In private homes, scholars taught students. In libraries, scribes copied books. In workshops, artisans experimented with forms and patterns. The empire was not only ruling territory, it was shaping taste. It was shaping language. It was shaping what a great city could be. And yet, for all its beauty, Abbasid power was never simple. At its height, the Caliph in Baghdad claimed authority over the vast Islamic world. But ruling such a large space was incredibly difficult. The empire stretched across different peoples, languages, landscapes, and interests. North Africa was far from Baghdad. Spain had already escaped Abbasid control under the surviving Umayyads. Local governors grew stronger. Military commanders gained influence. Regional dynasties began to rule in practice. This is the great tension of the Abbasid Golden Age. Culturally, Baghdad became stronger and stronger. Politically, the empire slowly became harder to control. The mind of the civilization expanded, but the body of the empire began to loosen. This is why the Abbasid Golden Age is different from some other empires in this series. Rome's power was visible in roads, legions, law, and the control of the Mediterranean. Tang China's power was visible in its capital, bureaucracy, poetry, trade, and military reach. The Abbasid Caliphate had armies and territory, but its greatest legacy was not simply conquest. Its greatest legacy was Baghdad as a world center of knowledge. For a time, if you wanted to find the cutting edge of mathematics, medicine, philosophy, astronomy, translation, and scholarship, Baghdad was one of the most important places on earth. A civilization does not have to control every land forever to shape history forever. Sometimes the most powerful empire is the one that changes what people know. Think of the world around the year 800. In Western Europe, Charlemagne was trying to revive learning in his empire. In China, the Tang dynasty was still one of the richest and most advanced civilizations on earth. In India, mathematical and astronomical traditions continued to develop. In Byzantium, Greek Christian scholarship preserved parts of the ancient world. But Baghdad was unique because it connected so many worlds at once. Greek philosophy, Persian administration, Indian mathematics, Arab language, Islamic theology, Central Asian trade, Mediterranean commerce. The Abbasid achievement was not isolation, it was synthesis. They took the knowledge of many civilizations and gave it a shared language. Arabic became one of the great languages of science and thought. A scholar in one city could read ideas from another. A physician in Baghdad could study a Greek tradition through Arabic. A mathematician in Central Asia could build on earlier Indian ideas through Arabic. A philosopher in Spain could engage with texts shaped in the Abbasid world. This is how knowledge travels, not as a straight line, but as a river with many streams. And for a time, Baghdad was the river's greatest meeting point. But every golden age carries a question. How long can it last? By the middle of the 9th century, the Abbasid caliphs faced growing challenges. Turkish military forces became increasingly important. Court politics became dangerous. The capital shifted at times. Regional rulers gained independence. The caliph remained symbolically important, but real power began to spread outward. This did not end the Golden Age immediately. In fact, science, literature, medicine, and philosophy continued to flourish across the broader Islamic world for centuries. But the early Abbasid moment, when Baghdad stood as the unmatched political and intellectual heart of the empire, began to fade. This is why the period from about 750 to 950 is so important. It captures the rise, height, and transformation of Abbasid power. First, the revolution. Then, the founding of Baghdad. Then, the wealth of Harun al-Rashid. Then, the intellectual ambition of al-Mamun. Then, the great translation movement. Then, the spread of knowledge across the world. And finally, the slow separation between cultural greatness and political control. There is a powerful lesson here. The Abbasids did not become great simply because they defeated the Umayyads. Many dynasties win wars, many rulers build palaces, many empires collect taxes. But only a few civilizations create an atmosphere where learning becomes a source of prestige. In Abbasid Baghdad, knowledge could bring honor. A translator could matter. A doctor could matter. A mathematician could matter. A poet could matter. A librarian could matter. A scribe could matter. A ruler who supported knowledge could make his city immortal. That is why Baghdad's golden age still lives in memory. Not because every story about it is perfectly clear, not because every legend is historically exact, but because something extraordinary really happened there. A city rose on the Tigris. Books arrived from many lands. Scholars turned old wisdom into new questions. And for a shining period of history, Baghdad became one of the greatest centers of civilization on earth. Imagine standing at the gate of Baghdad around the year 830. You hear different languages in the street. You smell bread, spices, ink, leather, and river water. You see caravans entering from the east. You see ships carrying goods along the Tigris. You see students walking with manuscripts under their arms. You see a physician discussing a case. You see a merchant calculating profit with numbers that will one day help reshape mathematics. You see a translator comparing Greek and Syriac words. You see a caliph who believes that knowledge can strengthen an empire. And above it all, you see a city that believes the world can be understood. That is the Abbasid Golden Age. A moment when power and knowledge met. A moment when Baghdad did not just rule land. It gathered the mind of the world. But history is never only about glory. It is also about what survives after glory fades. The Abbasid army weakened, the empire fragmented, regional powers rose. Baghdad would later face disasters no one in its golden age could have imagined. But the knowledge shaped in the Abbasid world did not disappear. It traveled. It moved through scholars, books, libraries, schools, and translations. It influenced medicine. It influenced mathematics. It influenced philosophy. It influenced astronomy. It influenced the way later civilizations understood the ancient world. That is why the Abbasid Golden Age belongs in the story of the most powerful civilizations of their time. Because power is not only measured by armies, power is also measured by memory, by ideas, by the ability to gather the wisdom of the past and pass it to the future. So when we ask, what made the Abbasid Caliphate great? The answer is not only that it ruled from West Asia to North Africa, not only that it controlled wealthy trade routes, not only that its caliphs commanded armies and tribute. The deeper answer is this: the Abbasids built a world where knowledge became imperial, where books became treasures, where translators became bridge builders between civilizations, where Baghdad became a capital not only of politics, but of human thought. Harun al-Rashid gave the Abbasid court its image of wealth, power, and splendor. Mamun gave it one of its strongest associations with reason, scholarship, and science. Together, their age helped turn Baghdad into a symbol of the Islamic Golden Age, a city of rulers, a city of merchants, a city of scholars, a city of books, a city where the world's knowledge was not buried. It was awakened. In the end, the Abbasid Golden Age reminds us of something simple but powerful. Civilizations rise when they conquer, but they become unforgettable when they create. The Abbasids conquered a throne, they built a capital, they ruled an empire. But their greatest achievement was this: they made knowledge a form of power. And for 2 centuries, Baghdad was one of the brightest lights on earth. This was the Abbasid Caliphate, the empire that turned Baghdad into the center of knowledge, the civilization that gathered the wisdom of many worlds, and the Golden Age that proved one truth. Sometimes, the strongest empire is not the one that destroys the most. It is the one that preserves, studies, and passes on what humanity cannot afford to lose.